So we'll see how I did on the part that I re-looked over this week, and because I was ready to teach this week, but have a few things to add. By the way, stay up to speed on your Bible reading. I know that the Bible reading right now, maybe you find it exciting. I do not. And so if you don't, but still stay faithful, doing what you're supposed to do. Somebody in the last day told me this is the most consistent they've ever been in their Bible reading. For me, it's most consistent time, because we do the videos at about the same time. But then again, if I get bored with something, the 3 chapters, then maybe skip on to something else, which we can always do, by the way. All right, so last week we were right around verse 8, but you be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then are you bastards and not sons. And remember, we talked about those things. If we can continually sin without repercussion, then it could be that we are not saved. However, now watch, we're only saved through grace. If you saved by faith through grace, if that's the only way we're saved, then don't need to use this to be a barometer for your salvation. But also I think for me early on, what I forgot to remember is conviction is a chastisement. Ulcers are a chastisement. Distraction, lack of productivity, all those things are chastisements. So it isn't always going to jail. It isn't always, having somebody beat you up. But just remember that. And so then we get down to verse 13. And make straight paths for your feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, but let it rather be healed. And that's referring back to 12, which I think we ended at 11 then. Wherefore lift up the hands which hang down and the feeble knees. Now watch this, verse 14. Follow peace with all men, holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. This ties in a little bit to what I said Sunday morning. You're going to find what you're looking for. If you're looking for a reason to be mad and you're looking for a reason to be happy, you're going to find it. And here it's holiness is how we see the Lord. So if we can't see the Lord in particular things, we need to look at that whole thing about, the lack of holiness, or even if you want to take it to mean saved, which I don't think that's what that means there. And here's what I'm going to spend a good, matter of fact, we'll be done a little bit early tonight. Look at verse 15. We're going to talk about this for a little bit. Looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. Now, when it talks about there, notice there it says the bitterness springing up. We have the root of bitterness there. See, the root of bitterness goes down. And inside of us, it goes down. And it works, and it works, and it could be that we don't even see it until it springs up. I've talked about that recently. It seems like the older I get, I remember when I first got saved, I was with David. God, show me what sins I'm committing. And it seems like the older we get, I don't know if this is true for anyone else, and maybe the closer we get, that it's just like the closer, the more you realize that how unworthy of even being called a Christian you are. And I don't know if that's the case for anybody else. The older I get, it seems like that's a much easier thing to figure out. I don't have to necessarily ask God anymore. It's like, yeah, I see it. But there are times in my life. So if this happens to me, I think it happens to you. And it could just be that when I say I think I have a great memory, I remember details, stupid details. But however, when I say that, there could be one of you that has a great memory as well and say, well, he forgot this. And if that be the case, I apologize. And let me know what they are, and I'm glad to apologize for something I've forgotten. How's it going? But when I see there, the root of bitterness comes down, and then it springs up. I had somebody offer to help me back in August. Well, actually, I shouldn't say offered, just jumped up and helped. And I flipped out on, when I say flipped out on Lisa, that doesn't mean, flailing or anything like that. Nobody's in danger. But I was pretty upset. And, somebody just tried to help. I'm like, and I had to come to the realization later, you know what? They're just trying to help. How about be thankful? And but what it showed me by that upbringing is there's still bitterness that needs to be worked out. And it could be that you have bitterness against somebody that's your closest friends or people who've been around forever and those things. But notice here, the root of bitterness springing up trouble you. Now watch this, and thereby many be defiled. And so then it could be that bitterness that roots down in my heart and springs up, whether it's shows a certain way, could that be that it defiles the people around me? Let me use a couple of illustrations. What if, let's say, I dislike a certain pastor for something he said to me 15 years ago, right? And I have nobody in mind right now. But then I say something to you, and then all of a sudden, because maybe it wasn't something necessarily wrong. It's just, I don't like it. And so then all of a sudden you go to camp, and then all of a sudden he's one of your speakers. Then you feel if you listen to the guy and like the guy, then all of a sudden you're being disloyal to your pastor because you're being nice to this other guy or enjoying listening to him, right? I mean, I deal with that even now. There's people that I didn't even want to go. Matter of fact, there's a guy in this very state that I particularly like. But for how he treated one of my friends, I don't want to go hear him. I don't want anything to do with him. And so I understand that somebody else's anger kind of affected me that way. And by the way, sometimes it's the right thing to do. I'm going to stand by my friends. And but could it be that some of my bitterness, that is rooted down and has sprung up, has defiled other people? You have Brooke here, who has been in my house now for going on 19 years. And so, oh gee, I don't know what this is all about. And, but she has been able to see some of my bitterness over that time. And so could it be that some of mine has then affected her? Or that I'm the pastor of church and some of my bitterness has affected other people? However, we as a people, as an individual person, we have a responsibility when it comes to bitterness. We have a responsibility to figure it out independent of the other person. Does the other person have to apologize to you in order to get it fixed? What if you never get that apology? What if the other person doesn't even remember what they said or did? I remember this week, I don't know why this came up in my mind. You might, some of you that play sports might know this, but my senior year, I never stepped off the field, just like Chris. It's just every play defense, every play offense, every play special teams. I don't remember being on the sideline, and if I did, I remember being embarrassed by it. I'm going to stand in front of somebody else because I don't want to see my number on the sideline, right? It's just because that was the expectation for me and at the school. My senior year, our second to our last game, we played Roseburg, which Roseburg at the time was on a how many years win streak and state, and they just obliterated us. They were bigger, they were faster, more well coached. And as an outside linebacker, it's my job in the 5-3 defense, if something is to sweep, is to, the defensive end in that scenario is penetration first, then in, and then the linebacker gets to the outside. And apparently I wasn't getting to the outside quick enough against Roseburg. And so that Monday I sat down in the coach's thing, and the first time ever. And I still remember Coach Schmidt sat me down and said, you know what? You aren't getting to we watched film, you weren't getting to the outside fast enough. We're going to let Jeremy Prickles start. So do the math. If it was my senior year, next to last game, here we are, my senior year, last game, playing Thurston. Yeah. No. You don't know how bad it hurts to go over there. And so I still, if I think about it too long, can still get angry at Coach Schmidt 30 years later. Imagine that. How stupid is that? I'd love to go talk to the guy, but the thing is, Jeremy Prickle doesn't even remember it. I talked to him about it like 5 years ago. I was like, hey, you remember this? He's like, no. And so I was in before the first quarter was over, by the way, but anyways. But there are just things like that all the time. People say something stupid and it sticks with you, and the bitterness sticks, right? And sometimes it's just the stupidest things. I'm not going to mention any names, but I have to give you a couple of illustrations, and one of them that I learned of today. We've been doing this church thing for 17 and a half years. You've been here the entire time. Marion, have I ever made you mad? Yeah, I have. Okay. What's funny is there's two options when that happens. Well, no, actually, there's three options. The first option is to suffer yourself to be defrauded, right? And I think that's what we should do more often. The other option is get mad, dwell on it for a little bit, but then to work it out. I didn't even know I made you mad. I knew the answer was going to be yes to that, by the way. I can probably guess the times. I can probably, figure out a few of them. Has it been recently? Nothing recently. How far back do we have to go?
A while.
So you remember specifics and you haven't talked to me about them. That's nice.
I remember just like you do. I remember everything.
But however, anyways. So your first option is to suffer yourself to be defrauded. Just let it go. Which is, I think, usually the best option. The number two option is to go back and work it out with that person. The number three option is to just kind of flee the situation. You're making me bitter over there. The number three option is just to get mad, let it dwell, and let it just stick, not get over it, and then flee the situation. Again, I'm not going to use names. I got a message from a woman who was reached by our church probably even earlier on that, probably 16 years ago. And her mom started coming here, I believe reached by Matt. We baptized them. We led them to Christ. We helped them move a couple times, gave them a van, whatever the case is. And if your memory goes back to giving a van, no, it wasn't the Tylers. And it's interesting, they reached out because I've started a church. She wants to start a church down in Springfield. And, how do we do this? And so my questions, if you ask me that question, my first question is going to be, why do you want to start a church? I'm not threatened because the people that go to this church are not going to go to that one. The people that we would reach are not the same people she would reach. So it's not a question of, is it going to affect my Social Security or, the numbers in our church? And I made it clear that obviously it isn't. But I asked the question, and the question would always be, why do you want to start a church? If somebody would have asked me when I was 28 and moving here to start the church, was I 28 when we moved here? Yeah, 28. When we moved here, we started the church when I was 29. And they asked me, why do you want to start a church? Well, it isn't that I want to. It's what God called me to do, and I know He did. Matter of fact, we made that clear enough to where Matt and Miranda trusted us to follow and come along and do it. And so I'm moving here. But we're at the place now where if you have a following that you all of a sudden now should lead something. And I made the comment, and she took it the wrong way because I didn't know that I acted like, no, I knew she was going to be the pastor, but at the same time, I was like, there are biblical qualifications to pastoring a church. And I said churches start churches. Men don't start church, nor women start churches. Churches start churches. That's a biblical principle. Authority means something. I don't have the right to just go out willy-nilly and go start a church somewhere. A church starts a church. The Great Commission was given to churches, not to individuals, to carry out. And that's evidenced by the whole thing where, we're supposed to reach Judea and Samaria and the other part of the earth. I can't do that as an individual. I need a church and somebody else to help me do that. Because once I get to another Jerusalem, that place I left becomes the uttermost parts of the world. Anyways, and so there was offense taken that I didn't think that she was qualified to pastor a church. I didn't come out and say anything about the 3 chapters in the Bible that talk about the qualifications for a pastor, but just the fact that she didn't know that there were 3 chapters in the Bible that talk about that shows me you're a novice, right? But through the conversation, I suggested, I'm not talking about coming to our church. Go find one that's already doing what you're doing with a qualified pastor and do what you want to do there. Grow a little bit. All right, we're back. And grow a little bit. And then, go work there. But through the conversation, that's neither here nor there, but if you want to pastor a church and you don't even know that there's biblical requirements for a pastor, then I would suggest you're a novice and shouldn't do it. So then the question came back to, why did you leave? I didn't ask. But, she talked about how, and here's where we're going to get in bitterness. She talked about how all these disenfranchised people have been in churches and they've left and they've been hurt. And I told her, yes, but there's always a second side of a story. We have people in this church that have come from other churches. It doesn't happen as often. But I think pretty much everybody that has come from another church, they've tried to solve the conflict there before leaving and going to another one. I think that's pretty much a universal statement, I believe. But when people leave churches and then badmouth, and this is one thing that I've always taken with a grain of salt, badmouth the church they came from, we have to remember there's a second side of the story. Even if it's a church that I hear something and I want to believe it, I'm not supposed to do that. The second side of the story always has a human element, and that other side has a story as well. But what we do is we accept the story. We let the bitterness root down, spring up, and spread because we don't handle things biblically. Biblically. In a Bible, the way the Bible tells us we should. Biblically, yes. See, adding an L in at the end just makes it an adverb, so you can say in a Bible fashion. So, anyway. So then, I didn't ask. But she told me through this, and again, I'm not giving names, no reason for anybody to get upset, that her mom put together a baby shower, and nobody from the church showed up to it. And then from the pulpit, later on at some point, we set up a baby shower for somebody in the church. I asked the question, do you know why nobody showed up? Because I don't. Because I don't remember. Because we didn't handle this biblically in the first place. You have a problem. You have 3 options. Dwell and change the complete trajectory of your life. I told her I wanted you, and who was her boyfriend at the time? Man, I wanted you to have I wanted you middle class. I didn't say all these things, but owning a home. I wanted you guys to be, in a right direction. And so it's interesting, but that instead of going to somebody, and if you have anger and bitterness, going to somebody before it festers. Now, we can have an option of not letting it fester like Miranda did, because I don't even know how I made her mad. I don't know how I could possibly make her mad. Right? I guess you've made me mad too. I just can't name specifics. I'm only saying it because I want you to one-up you. No. But what? Ooh, yeah, no. But so we take the option of fixing it. Don't let the sun go down in your anger. That is the option that we do before we flee. But because we didn't figure out, nobody came to me and said, hey, why didn't anybody come to my baby shower? Because this was 15 years ago, I could have answered the question. Did you have it on a WMF night? Did you have it on a Wednesday night? Were you going to have alcohol there? Were you going? I could have asked all these different questions and had a reason why nobody showed up. But you know what? I don't remember not going to a baby shower. But we're this far separated, they left friends, they left everything over a baby shower. And because they were made to feel worthless because nobody came. I don't know why anybody didn't come. I doubt if I were to ask you, anybody would know. But because nobody asked, we flee without fixing. Now, if we just stay in one place, there's going to be a chance I'm going to say something to make you mad. Let's see, Tristan, Simon, Kioske, you are the newest in the church that's in the room, right? I'm eventually going to make you mad if I haven't yet. Right? You know, that's why. But what we do is we try to work it out. If we don't try to work it out, because honestly, there's not a person in the church I haven't made mad. You have been mad at other people in the church. You know, there's probably in this room people who don't like each other. But we don't just throw it all away without... Why did everybody look at Angela? Oh, you looked at who? Gavin? No, I just saw Angela look that way and smile.
No,
Angela, who are you looking at?
Jevin is looking at Abe.
Okay. And Miranda looked at her own kid. So, but so what we've done is if you want to leave this church over doctrine, and by the way, I know of nobody leaving the church. You want to leave the church over doctrine, you want to leave the church over the fact that you've been made mad, then the thing is we try to fix it first. But if we don't fix it, we don't cover it, what we do is we leave. Even a pastor could do this, by the way. And one of the things I said was, a pastor, on average, of course, there's some people that change the average, stays at a church an average of 4 years. Youth pastors are even less than that. So, you know, Chris is holding up the average. It's kind of like the average rock star dies at, I think, 32, 33. But man, as soon as Keith Richards goes, that average is going, you know, skyrocketing. Y'all know Keith Richards is a missionary. Missionary to the UK. But, you know, it's worth the investment before we leave friends of a lifetime to at least chit-chat about it and say, hey, you know what? This is what happened. This is how I perceive it. Before we leave, let's see if there's a way to fix this. But what we do is we get so stinking mad that we'll throw away everything and just go off on a just whatever trajectory, see where we land, and spend that entire time bitter. That person has been thinking about that, well, at first, every day of their life for probably a couple years. And now, still thinking about it enough to where we're having a conversation about starting a church. She had to bring it up that that's what happened. I haven't thought about it once in 12 years. And that's the way bitterness works. You're mad at somebody who doesn't even know that you should be mad at them. Do you think Coach Schmidt thought of me one time after that November of 1991? He probably thought of me, oh, that Gillespie. You know, he probably thought nothing of the fact that he benched me on the last game I ever played on defense. Don't you think twice about it? And so, but the thing is, you see here, you have a responsibility on that root of bitterness. I think I was onto something Sunday morning. We build a case for negative, but we don't build cases for positive. It was like God slapped me alongside the head when, whoa, that's pretty good. Because I was wondering all week, why am I writing the sermon? And there I was hit with it. We don't build cases for good. We build cases for bad. See, there it happened again. Speaking of that, I'm saying churches in general, we're big on making fun of cancel culture right now, aren't we? But you know, the churches have always had cancel culture. And we never should have. No, yeah, cancel culture, you know, stay away from things that, you know, I believe get woke, go broke. You know what? I just want to shop at your company. I just want to go in, let's say Jerry's. I just want to go into Jerry's. If I want a tool, I just want to go there and want to buy the tool. I don't want propaganda, which they don't have any, you know, hanging off the ceiling. The one time I went to Valley River in the last couple months, you walk in the front door, we made Brookman now. Walk in the front door and there's a big old banner up there government propaganda. You know what? Fine, I'll go shop at Amazon. Anyways, you don't think there's going to be some bitterness coming after these last 2 years? Everybody's going to have something going on. But the thing is, we're facing cancel culture, aren't we? You know, we face it. You know, the people that believe the old time truths of Scripture have faced cancel culture for a long time. And so then this also led into this. I was watching a video recently. I enjoyed cartoons growing up. Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner. My kids never got into it. There's something about they want something more sophisticated than dropping an anvil on somebody's head. I don't get it. You know, an anvil on a head should be sufficient. You know, a short red-haired guy telling you he's the rootinest, tootinest, riftiest raft ever rift a raft. Shoot through the head and it goes through the hat and it spins. Daffy Duck getting his head blown off, but his bill, just spins. I was never tempted to go shoot somebody in the head with a shotgun after watching Bugs Bunny. Now listen here. I said, why did Porky Pig wear a shirt but no pants? I mean, these are just things we dealt with, I did not like He-Man. I thought it was stupid. And it got even more stupid when they decided to add She-Ra, and then She-Ra was her own thing. And then all of a sudden, She-Ra was given most of the franchise. And then you wonder why, and this was what the video was about. In '85, He-Man was the biggest thing. More toys sold than any other brand. Then all of a sudden, they tried to be more inclusive. They tried to bring other people in. Well, we want more girls to watch this. So, most of the comments were the girls were happy to see some strong, smart woman, but they still were going to watch He-Man because that made more sense, right? And do you still have audio over there?
Yeah.
This voicemail thing is, so I'll move it real quick so I want to look at it. But appealing to a larger audience doesn't help anybody. NASCAR. I grew up on NASCAR. If you grew up anywhere near Mike Gray, you grew up watching NASCAR. I remember, watching Richard Petty. I remember all those sorts of neat things. I used to have a racetrack. It was one of those old Tyco. You pull the thing and the race, and it was Cale Yarborough versus Kyle Petty. Remember all the races, all the championships. But you know what? We can't have a cigarette brand on there anymore. Because remember, it was the Marlboro Cup. Now we're going to switch to whoever was after that, and then it went to Sprint. Nobody wants Sprint Cup. What is it now? I can't even tell you. I haven't watched a NASCAR race in 2 years. Of course, it was a long time before that before I stopped watching. But they started to try to get more inclusive. You get more inclusive. Back in my day, those huge grandstands were always full. Daytona 500. Now they don't point the camera towards the stands because they don't want you to know they're less than half full. They had an event recently. They raced inside of the LA Coliseum. That's pretty cool. In LA, how many millions of people around there? But the stands, 3/4 of the way full. In LA. For a racetrack inside of a football stadium. That's pretty cool. First time ever. Well, first time in 50 years that they've had that short of a track of a 1/4 mile. But all these things are trying to appeal to a larger base. Churches are doing the same thing and then wonder why we're facing cancel culture, wonder why we're not making a difference. We are starting our churches with the purpose of reaching some demographic instead of just trying to reach people who want to, look at our Wednesday nights, We even our Sundays, to be honest, are people who aren't looking for flash because we don't have any. We're not looking for big buildings. You're just looking to know the Bible a little bit better. Looking to get to know God a little bit better. Maybe improve my marriage. Maybe improve my child rearing. Whatever the case is, be a better friend, mother, daughter, son. All the different relationships that we have. And then maybe you just have somebody here that you like and you're a friend. Whatever the case is. Or we could go ahead and try. What's the temptation? Our temptation then would be we want a larger crowd. We want more people to show up. If we were to compromise what we believe and start being more inclusive, we might get more people. But by reaching more people, what do? We lose our core people. Churches all over the place are doing this. We knock on doors all the time, and I think we're seeing it less and less because those people are dying off. Sorry, that sounded kind of blunt. But churches are going to a more contemporary service in order to reach a different demographic and losing the old people that have been the pillars of their church for generations. Remember the mayors who came to church? That's exactly what happened with them. They were hurt. They weren't going anywhere. Knocked on their door. Hey! I was like, do you sing hymns? Yeah. But they didn't want to come because you know what? You're going to change too. And so now we have all these old folks all over the place. Don't go to church anymore. Because somebody decided, you know what? We're going to leave our core. We're going to leave what's important to us and just try to reach people, right? Because that sounds like a great thing. We're just here to reach people. Well, no, we're not here to reach people. We're here for a certain purpose. And if it does reach people, that's a great thing. And so you see all these things work together. And so then we can also, yeah, that's enough. So watch cancel culture, appealing, bitterness. And so I knew I was going to spend an extra time there for that. So let's look at what bitterness does. And it leads right into verse 16. Lest there be any fornicator or profane person as Esau, who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. Because we get bitter, because that root gets down there, we make dumb decisions, but it's always somebody else's fault. Whenever you talk to somebody who's left a church, it is always the church's or the pastor's fault. Always. If you leave church over a baby shower, did Scripture matter at all? Maybe nobody sent out, maybe you sent out the things a day late. Nobody knew about it. But because nobody ever asked, I could. And by the way, if you're ever going to plan something in the church, but not have it be in the church, nobody asked me to do, if somebody would ask me, hey, you want to, announce baby shower? Maybe I'll announce, I don't know. Make no promises. But, you want to ask the question, did you check with people if that day works for them? If you're planning on them being there? How many times have we had to change? We finally come to a place in our church where we're just like, you know what? We're going to schedule stuff. If you can, we're trying to make it so the most people can come. But you know what? You always fail. So it's just, you come to that place. You come to a place where, you know what, we're going to schedule it, and people can show up, they can show up, if they can't, they can't. Matter of fact, I think you kind of drove that home finally a little bit. No, was it Becca? One of you two. About, you know what, we'll just schedule it. It was about Valentine's or something, I think. If we just schedule it, people show them. If they don't, they don't. If it's just two people there, it's just two people there. But you see here, lest there be any fornicator or profane person. That profane there isn't talking about cussing. That profane is talking about not seeing into the future. Who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. And I have a sermon. It's all for a bowl of chili. You sold your birthright. You sold your right to be in the lineage of Jesus Christ over a bowl of chili. You were hungry. And you gave it all up for a bowl of frickin' chili. Can I say that, Angela?
Yeah. Not freaking.
I used it, whatever. All over a bowl of chili. You sold your birthright. And it could be, that, maybe you in this room or maybe somebody watching, that we would make a dumb decision. Do you teenagers feel like anybody's harping on you right now? No? I don't mean right now. I mean just in general the last few months. Okay, good. Because I feel like I'm harping on you. I know that Chris is probably harping on you back there. I'm not sure. And I know, when Pastor Matt has you in here during his Sunday school, he's harping on you. When was that? You were gone on Sunday, right? So, and then if you catch Matt, in a sideways mood at some point, then he rails and rants, and then you feel cornered, and he has a suggestion for you, right? And but the thing is, you can feel that way, but the thing is, we've seen so many people go haywire over bitterness and over a bowl of chili, and their entire trajectory of their life has changed. Don't let that be us. All right, let's keep on going. Now we have to go quick through the rest of the chapter in order to get done. And so, verse 17, for ye know that afterward, when he would have inherited the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place of repentance, though he sought it carefully with tears. And by the way, so in context, the root of bitterness that was in Esau sprung itself up and evidenced itself in a bowl of chili, but it led to the Edomites. No, it didn't. Yes, the Edomites. And right now, there is no country of Edom. His bitterness spread. His pride spread. And it affected people after him. You think, and by the way, I don't think this is happening with any of you. You think, you know what? I'm going to quit going to church. I'm going to quit this. I'm going to quit that. And all of a sudden, well, what about your kids? Well, I'll lead them to Christ. Okay, what about your grandkids? What about your great-grandkids? We make decisions without even thinking about the next generation. And it just drives me insane. So Esau rejected the blessing, and now let's get back to the lesson. Israel, it's feared by the author, is about to do the same. For verse 18, for ye are not come unto the mount that might be touched, and we just read about that the last couple of weeks, that burn the fire, nor into blackness and darkness and tempest. That's all from Exodus chapter 19. And the sound of a trumpet, that's Jesus' voice up there, and the voice of words, which voice they that heard entreated that the word should not be spoken to them anymore. Don't talk to me. That's the last thing that somebody in bitterness wants to do, is to hear from God. Verse 20, for they could not endure that which was commanded, and if so much as a beast touch the mountain, it shall be stoned or thrust through with a dart. And so terrible was the sight that Moses said, I exceedingly fear and quake. We get this idea that we get to heaven, if we see God for the first time, that's going to be jumping around in joy. Man, I think we're hitting the deck. That's what John did. John saw Jesus on the Isle of Patmos. He went face first. Yes, we will be in spiritual bodies. We'll be in heaven. But I just don't think it's going to be a thing where we run and jump and straddle Jesus and everybody's having a good time. I think we're going to be taking a knee, and I'm glad to do so, by the way. Verse 22. That must be what's so irritating people. Like in chapter 11 talks about those people who went to heaven before us. And chapter 12 then says, wherefore we encompass about so great a cloud of witnesses. Can you imagine how frustrating it is for somebody who's gone to heaven to watch us when they know what heaven's about and we don't, and we're just ourselves? Oh, that must be frustrating. I feel like I forgot something. Oh, yeah. But you're coming to Mount Zion, unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to an innumerable company of angels. All right. To the general assembly and church of the firstborn. So that's not talking about the local church, which are written in heaven. 9 times out of 10 in the Bible, when the Bible's talking about the church, it's talking about the local church, not talking about the church in general. Here it isn't. To God be the judge of all, and to the spirits of just men made perfect. 2 Peter 2:7 talks about that. And to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant. So now we're getting back to the blood. And the better part is coming up, to the blood of sprinkling that speaketh better things than that of Abel. Again, you see the word better. Abel was killed. God said, hey, I hear his blood speaking to me. Interesting. And so blood speaks, tells a story. And even we know that. You can't even bleach that stain out. Verse 25, last 5 verses here, we'll be done. We'll just go quick. See that you refuse not him that speaketh. And again, now we're getting, I think, to the whole theme of Hebrews. For if they escape not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven. Whose voice then shook the earth. But now, by the way, even his voice shook the earth. Don't get hung up on the vastness of space and the size of God. First off, God is not physical, that he needs a space. Who created God? And we think wrong. Space has time, has volume, and has weight. You can't have matter without a place to put it, and you need a time to put it. God does not exist in any of those 3 things. So our God has to be bigger than that. And we say bigger, we're not, is he bigger? Is he physically bigger? When you're coming to spiritual, that size doesn't matter. I read an interesting thing this week. They're talking about the size of the universe. Do you know that if you just took away gravity, If the Andromeda galaxy, eventually we're going to collide, I don't think we'll be alive for it. Maybe, it's a couple billion years, maybe I'll still be around, who knows. But if the universe is our galaxies are so vast that the galaxies, forgetting gravity, could pass between and we would never even notice it, other than maybe the brightness. You could do it without things colliding. It looks like a bunch of dust, but the vastness of space allows for everything just to pass through and more than likely things not even touch. Kind of cool. I thought that was, at least. Again, not accounting for gravity. Okay, let's keep on going here. So whose voice shook the earth? My voice barely even shakes the room. His voice shakes the entire planet. So they were aware of the size. But now that he has promised, saying, yet more shall shake not only the earth but also heaven. And this in this word, yet once more signifieth the removing of those things that are shaken, of the things that are made, and those things which cannot be shaken may remain. Wherefore we receive a kingdom that which cannot be moved. Let us have grace, whereby we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear, for our God is a consuming fire. All right, any questions?